The NFL draft does not disappoint, but before we get into that, we got some trade news. As Teddy Bridgewater got traded from the Panthers to the Broncos for a 6th-round pick. This one is understandable because they just traded for Sam Darnold a few weeks ago. And in doing so, they said, Teddy, where do you want to go? And we'll make it happen. We'll make that trade happen. And he chose Denver because he got a good defense with Von Miller and Bradley Chubb. But then, on offense, you have a pretty good receiving core in terms of Cortland Sutton and Jerry Jeudy. So, I think it was a good move by Teddy Bridgewater, and it was a good move by the Panthers to get something in that trade instead of just letting Teddy walk. The first pick in the 2021 NFL Draft was Trevor Lawrence by the Jacksonville Jaguars. This one, we knew this since the Jets won 2 games and gave the Jacksonville Jaguars the the first overall pick, and they swapped picks. Now the Jets had the second. And since then, they've been saying the first overall pick in the 2021 draft would be Trevor Lawrence, and it is. We knew this one. Trevor Lawrence is a marvelous athlete. It's like, tell us something we don't know. We've known this since late December. We knew this. Number 2 is Zach Wilson. This one is a little more tricky. Zach Wilson, obviously, from BYU. In my mind, it was between Zach Wilson and Justin Fields. And they chose Zach Wilson. Because Zach Wilson, they refer to as very much like Joe Burrow, Russell Wilson. He can move around, he can throw on the run, he can do all these things. I think it was a good pick by the Jets. And they need a good quarterback in that city in the Big Apple. Number 3 was Trey Lance. Now this one, it took a long time for them to figure out who they were really going to pick. Because there was talk of Mac Jones as a smokescreen. They were picking Justin Fields. Oh no, they want to pick Mac Jones. But then Trey Lance impressed them, so now they're picking Trey Lance. And it only came out, I think, a day before the draft happened that they really decided who they were going to pick, and they picked Trey Lance. Trey Lance is obviously from North Dakota State, which is the same college that Carson Wentz went to. But here's the difference. They're both physical. They're both pretty strong. They're both strong guys that can run. They have strong arms, but Trey Lance has better footwork than Carson Wentz does. And that will set him apart because he's more accurate in terms from the pocket and out of the pocket. Number 4, again another obvious one, Kyle Pitts went to Atlanta. Now, this is an option. It's like, okay, do we take Mac Jones and say, Matt Ryan, your years in Atlanta are done. They're done. We're going to get rid of you. Or, you know what, we're going to go get a tight end so Matt Ryan can have even more time in Atlanta. He could finish his whole career in Atlanta. Because he's going to have, they kept saying, NFL Network kept saying, freak. I'm going to call it freak of nature because this is a guy who's 6'5", has strong hands, a very crisp route runner, and he's hard to stop. There's nothing you can do. To pair him with Calvin Ridley and Julio Jones, if Julio's still there, that's going to be nearly an unstoppable offense for Arthur Smith to be able to play with. It's going to give Matt Ryan a few more years in Atlanta. Number 5, a very interesting pick. The Bengals did not pick Penei Sewell. They picked Jamar Chase, Joe Burrow's former teammate at LSU. Jamar Chase was the best receiver in the draft, which the Bengals did need a receiver because after losing A.J. Green, and only notable receivers were T. Higgins and Tyler Boyd. They needed a receiver. But we were predicting maybe late rounds. No, they went all in. They were like, okay, you want Jamar Chase? Here you go. But the problem is they don't have an offensive lineman to really help out Joe Burrow. So that's why it's a very interesting pick. It's not a terrible pick, but it's very interesting. Number 6 was Jalen Waddle, wide receiver from Alabama. In this one, I understand everyone's like, well, why didn't they pick Slater or Penei Sewell? It's because they don't need a tackle. They need receivers. They only now their receiving core is really going to be dominant. They have Devontae Parker, they have Mike Gesicki, and they have Will Fuller that they got from Houston. To now have Jalen Waddle on top of that give you speed, but also give you crisp route running ability and move around and be all over the place, it's going to give Tua a lot of help. Number 7, this is a little bit of a shocker. Penei Sewell goes to Detroit. And I remember watching their war room when they got Penei Sewell. There was a lot of hugging and fist bumping. The Detroit Lions war room was so excited that they got Penei Sewell. Now, I have to tell you, I thought they were taking a receiver. They lost Kenny Galladay. They don't really have any notable wide receivers. But they chose Penei Sewell to protect Jared Goff. And that's a pretty smart move if you're going to decide to run the ball. Number 8, and this one hurts my heart. The Carolina Panthers select J.C. Horn, cornerback from South Carolina. Now, the reason why this hurts my heart is the Cowboys were high on him, and they were leaning towards his way over Patrick Surtain, but Carolina was also high on him, and they had 2 picks. They were 2 picks ahead of Dallas. So, I'm a little angered at this because I like J.C. Horn, and obviously, if you're trying to remember, well, I've heard that name before. That's because his father, Joe Horn, played for the Saints and the Chiefs for those many years. A lot of young kids that their fathers play in the NFL. Number 9, this one hurts my heart as well. The Denver Broncos select Patrick Surtain, the second. This one hurt because in my mind, I thought they were going receiver. They chose, nope, we're going to go corner. Or I was thinking maybe they're going to take Michael Parsons. They took corner. This one hurt my heart because, as they said, Patrick Surtain, whose father played in the NFL, Pat Surtain, for many years, they both, like, everyone said that Patrick Surtain was pro-ready now, but J.C. Horn had more of an upside, had a higher ceiling than Surtain did. But now that the Cowboys can't get any, who would they go with? Well, they end up trading. They trade with all teams the Philadelphia Eagles, which in my mind I was like, we trade with Philadelphia? Why? Like it does happen. But besides last year's draft when we traded with them later in the rounds, it hadn't happened for like 4 or 5 years. Since then, the Cowboys moved to 12th. They also got a 3rd round pick, I believe 84th overall. And the Eagles selected Devontae Smith, which basically makes all the sense in the world because losing Deshaun Jackson, losing Alshon Jeffrey, potentially losing Zach Ertz, they need a receiver. And they need one badly because Jalen Reagor's not terrible, but he's not an outside threat. So, if you're the Eagles, you need a receiver, and you got one in Devontae Smith. Now, here's where it gets very interesting. The New York Giants then traded to the Chicago Bears. The Chicago Bears select quarterback Justin Fields from Ohio State. Now, we were not expecting Chicago to trade up, and yet here they did. Now, Ryan Pace, the general manager of the Bears, said, Andy Dalton's our starter until I say so. We don't know what that means. It could be next year. It could be this coming season. It could be halfway through the season if the season goes bad. Who knows? But that's what they did. I think it's a smart move. I don't know who he's going to throw to. He's going to have Allen Robinson and Mooney, but who else? We'll have to wait and see. The number 12 overall pick, the Cowboys pick Micah Parsons, linebacker from Penn State. So now the Cowboys linebacking crew has a guy from Notre Dame, a guy from Boise State, and a guy from Penn State. Micah Parsons is a great blitzing linebacker. He can cover tight ends and running backs, but there's a little concern about his anger issues, as he was ejected multiple times because of his anger. But that helps. It seals the need at linebacker because the Cowboys lost Sean Lee earlier on Monday as he retired. So it does give them a sealed linebacker position. And after he got drafted, Saquon Barkley tweeted out, because obviously Saquon Barkley went to Penn State. So this is like his Penn State brother. So it's going to be very interesting to see how this goes for many years to come, of the rivalry between Micah Parsons and Saquon Barkley. Number 13, the LA Chargers select Rashawn Slater, tackle, Northwestern. This is a good move because Rashawn Slater can play any position really on the offensive line. He can play tackle, he can play left tackle, he can play right tackle. He can play left guard, right guard. I think the only position he hasn't played in college was center, and he probably could still do that. He probably was my best tackle in the draft, so I think I thought it was a great pick by the Chargers. And we skip 14 because 15, Mac Jones gets picked by the New England Patriots. The New England Patriots selected him because, and they described him as like a Tom Brady type. In terms, he's very surgical. He's not mobile, not really, but he's surgical, and he can throw. He can get through his reads quickly. The concern is he can't, when he runs and he's having to throw on the run, he's not very accurate. He needs to be on his spot. Like Tom Brady, when he's on the run, he gets off his spot. He's not a very good quarterback. But when he's on his spot, I remember Bill Burr saying how Tom Brady, when he's in the pocket and he's on his spot and he's just throwing, he looks like he's 25. But when this guy's running, or even throwing on the run, it's like, man, I could beat this guy up. Because it looks like he can't hit anything. And that's just the way it was. And that's not his skill set. That's not Tom Brady's skill set, and that's not Mac Jones' skill set. But I think this is going to give a lot of possibilities to the New England Patriots, as well as giving Cam Newton a little bit of time to be hey, I can play a little bit too. Number 19, the Washington football team selects Jamin Davis. This is a good move. Jamin Davis can play all linebacker positions. They need this because they lost Thomas Davis to retirement early in the offseason. Now, here's some of the shocking picks that happened. At number 17, the Las Vegas Raiders select Alex Leatherwood, tackle, Alabama. Alex Leatherwood was probably the 4th or 5th best tackle in this year's draft. And that might be pushing it because he did struggle. But I think he'll be a good player. I just don't think people thought he's going at 17. I think people had him late 20s, maybe late 30s, early 40s. So, near the tail end of round 1 into early round 2. And the fact he goes 17, I think, was like, okay, that's a little weird. Number 22. Caleb Farley gets drafted by the Tennessee Titans. Now, Caleb Farley would be a great player. He was probably the number 1 corner before his back surgery, which he's had 2 back surgeries before the age of 25. If he stays healthy, he'll be a great player, no problem. He'll be better than Malcolm Butler was this year for the Titans, if he can stay healthy. If he doesn't stay healthy, it's going to be a waste of a pick. Number 26, Greg Newsome, cornerback, Cleveland. This one was a little shocking because Greg Newsome played at Northwestern, but everyone thought maybe 45, 50, in the 50th pick in the draft, not 26 overall pick. I think that's just the way it was. And he's not terrible, but it's he hasn't played a whole lot. Number 28, Peyton Turner, linebacker DN from Houston. He's going to the Saints. I don't agree with what Pete Prisco said about how there's a lot more people that are better at his position than he was. Because, as we said before, this defensive end draft is very weak. It's very weak. The edge rushers, it's weak, but the defensive end is very weak. It's not like previous years. It's harder to draft guys because it's so weak, teams are going to start reaching. So guys that would be in the 3rd or 4th round are getting picked in the 1st or 2nd round because there's just nothing. And Mike Mayock, who's the Rams general manager, not Rams, the Raiders general manager, he went and he worked for NFL Network. He used to cover the combine. He used to say, if you like a player and he's there when you are picking, you take him no matter where you are. No matter if it's 1st round or 7th round, doesn't matter, you take him. Because that doesn't happen very often. I think that's what happened with Peyton Turner. I think he's one of the better DNs in the draft, but I didn't think he would get picked so early. Maybe 3rd round if that's where the Saints wanted to go, but not 1st. Number 30. The Buffalo Bills select Gregory Rousseau, edge from Miami. Gregory Rousseau was one of the better guys. He struggled at his pro day, and his numbers have gone up and down, which is the reason why the Cowboys were not very interested in him, because his numbers going up and down. He had not a great pro day, and he struggled in some areas as an edge rusher. But I do think it's a good pick. I don't think it was quite a shocker, but I thought people must have thought, hey, he's going in the 2nd round. High 2nd round, not late 1st round. And finally, the number 32 overall pick. This one, it's not a shocking pick. It's actually a really good pick, but I put it in here because it's the last pick of the 1st round, and they can get all over the place. The Super Bowl winning Tampa Bay Buccaneers select Joe Tryon, linebacker. Joe Tryon, he is a good pick because Jason Pierre-Paul's getting up there in age. You don't want him to play every down. This gives them a little more flexibility. He's a lot faster than Jason Pierre-Paul is, but he's going to give you the ability at the linebacker position. Now, on Monday, we will come out with a video on the picks from the Washington football team, the Cowboys, Eagles, and the Giants, as well as interesting picks from day 2 and day 3. That will all come out on Monday. Now, I won't be able to put all the picks on, but I'll put as much as I can. But what do you guys think? Who was the most interesting pick in this year's draft in the 1st round? You decide.